Hi everyone, it's Ruby G. Welcome to Truth and Neurons. Today we're going to be diving deep into one of the most egregious examples of media malpractice I've ever witnessed. The Bryan Kohberger handwriting analysis catastrophe that should serve as a wake-up call for every viewer about the dangerous intersection of pseudoscience, ableism, and criminal justice.
Like, Bart, tell me if he's evil and he's treacherous. And I was like, I can't, Ashley, but now we can. So we have like this weird, shy, anxious guy with low self-esteem and frustration. And he's got a trait called recalcitrant, which means he's stubborn and defiant like a child. And he also has something really interesting that I have hardly ever seen in real life, which is basically most books call it a felon's claw or a injustice, a revenge seeking. And that's in this really odd D. But it does mean he's pissed off, he's angry, and he feels like everything is unjust. He reminds me of what they call an incel. This guy's not a mature man. I don't think he ever got past fourth grade level.
When I looked at just the character of his actual penmanship, it just looked like it was a child.
Let me paint you a picture of what we just witnessed on national television. A so-called forensic handwriting expert goes on a major news program and, based on nothing more than looking at someone's penmanship, declares that Bryan Kohberger possesses something called a felon's claw, a term so scientifically bankrupt that the analyst himself admits he's hesitant to use it. This expert then proceeds to diagnose Kohberger as having low self-esteem, being stubborn and defiant like a child, angry, seeking revenge, and comparing him to an incel, all from looking at his handwriting. The analyst even goes so far as to say that Kohberger never grew up and operates at a fourth grade level mentally and emotionally. Now here's what that expert didn't know, couldn't know, and apparently didn't care to consider. Bryan Kohberger has been formally diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, level 1, by not one, but 2 independent clinical experts following comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation. Dr. Rachel Orr, a clinical neuropsychologist, and Dr. Eileen Ryan, a board-certified psychologist. Both conducted extensive assessments, including cognitive testing, behavioural observations, developmental history, and interviews with family members and childhood teachers. Their findings? Kohberger presents with classic autism spectrum disorder characteristics that directly impact the very areas this handwriting charlatan was pontificating about on television. Let's break down what autism actually looks like versus what the media circus presented. The handwriting analyst mocked what he perceived as childish penmanship. But here's what he missed. Autism spectrum disorder frequently affects fine motor skills and executive functioning. Kohberger's evaluation revealed specific weaknesses in planning, cognitive flexibility, and organizational approach. He tends to process information in a piecemeal manner rather than look at the whole picture. His handwriting difficulties aren't signs of emotional immaturity. They're neurological manifestations of a developmental condition. What's even more disturbing is how this analysis played into the worst stereotypes about autism. The expert's description of Kohberger as a weird, shy, anxious guy who reminds me of an incel perpetrates harmful misconceptions that equate social awkwardness with dangerousness. Kohberger's actual diagnostic profile shows someone with a high average IQ, strong verbal abilities, abstract reasoning skills, and no evidence of thought disorder or disorganization. He maintained good grades in his master's program and was pursuing a PhD in criminology, hardly the picture of someone operating at a fourth grade level. But here's where it gets really insidious. Everything the handwriting analyst attributed to moral failings or criminal tendencies can be explained by well-documented autism characteristics. The intense Gaze, he mentioned. That's typical eye contact patterns common in autism. The perceived lack of emotional expression. That's the restricted range of affect and inconsistent social smiling documented in Kohberger's evaluation. The supposed anger and resentment. Those could easily be misinterpretations of the rigidity in thinking, sensory distractibility, and difficulty with social cues that are hallmarks of autism spectrum disorder. This isn't just bad journalism. This is a masterclass in how media pseudoscience can weaponize ableism against neurodivergent individuals. When we allow unqualified or outdated experts to make sweeping psychological pronouncements on national television without considering documented neurological conditions, we're not just failing one defendant, we're perpetuating dangerous stigmas against an entire community of neurodivergent individuals who already face significant discrimination and misunderstanding. This isn't kind. This is cruel. What we're witnessing here is a collision of two worlds: the sensationalized media landscape, hungry for psychological explanations, and the complex reality of neurodevelopmental conditions that don't fit neat narratives. The handwriting analyst's assessment reads like a Victorian era Phrenology reading, attributing moral character to physical characteristics without any scientific basis. Meanwhile, legitimate psychological evaluation reveals a nuanced picture of a highly intelligent individual with specific neurological differences that affect social communication and executive functioning. This case should serve as a warning about the dangers of following pseudoscientific analysis to masquerade as expert opinion in high-profile criminal cases. When media outlets platform individuals making definitive psychological assessments without considering documented medical conditions and without adhering to basic ethical standards, they're not informing the public. They're spreading misinformation and permeate harmful stereotypes about neurodivergent individuals. The real tragedy here isn't just the potential impact on Kohberger's case, it's also the message it sends to millions of autistic individuals and their families watching at home. When national television presents autism characteristics as signs of evil, criminality, or moral deficiency, it reinforces the same ignorance and prejudice that leads to employment discrimination, social isolation, and systemic marginalisation of the neurodivergent community. That's all for today's episode of Truth and Neurons. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on the ethics of media commentary in high-profile cases. Until next time, keep thinking critically and questioning everything. Cheers, bye.